Welcome everyone to Not That Media. My name is John and in today's video I continue my series of videos for the upcoming Monopoly Events convention For the Love of Horror. So come along with me as in this video I talk about Tom Fitzpatrick, aka Insidious's Bride in Black. If you're new here, firstly, thank you for watching and do please check out the playlist for the rest of my For the Love of Horror videos. At the time of recording, For the Love of Horror has 35 confirmed celebrity guests, and at this moment in time, I currently have 20 that I'm scheduled to meet. Might go up to 23, but it all depends on a certain film that's in the post and whether or not I enjoy it, because I've never seen it before. So, having attended the con for a few years, what I thought would be quite fun, and in an effort to try and obviously aid anybody who may not be familiar with the con or may not be aware of all the actors and actresses who are attending, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time in each video going through an actor and making some recommendations for some of the films. So this time, as I've already said, I'm going to be talking about Tom Fitzpatrick, who is synonymous with the Insidious franchise. Now, what I would say is normally with these videos, what I try to do is focus more on the actor as opposed to a specific character they've played. Reason being is obviously normally some actors have played a plethora of different horror icons or horror characters. Tom Fitzpatrick doesn't fall into that category, although he has a number of credits under his belt, TV and film and so on. From a horror perspective, I could only really find him in the Insidious franchise. But actually, when I sat down to think, well, how much content can I do when all I know is him as the Bride in Black, I actually had a realization that I wanted to talk arguably more about the Bride in Black as opposed to Tom Fitzpatrick, the actor. The reason being, and I'm going to throw this out here and dropping the mic or being as controversial as I like to be sometimes, for me, the Bride in Black is the most terrifying character in the entire Insidious franchise, and to me, it is the driving force of the entire franchise. It has the most impact on characters, it traverses most of the films, the impact of the events in the past and the future of this franchise can all be influenced by the Bride in Black, with the exception of Insidious 4, that is. So the Bride in Black makes appearances in Insidious 1, Insidious 2, Insidious 3 and Insidious 5, The Red Door. Whilst it is a very cool image and is synonymous with the franchise, everyone loves to talk about the red-faced demon. I'm going to put my cards straight on the table now and say that actually I think that the red-faced demon, outside of that one jump scare, is a very poorly utilized character. It's a fantastic image, it's a fantastic idea, but I don't think that anybody has ever truly justified or realized the lipstick or red-faced demon, depending on what side of the fence you fall. And sometimes he's called the red-faced demon, sometimes the lipstick demon. He looks great, he sounds great, the iconography is fantastic, but when you actually look at these films, I actually think that the red-faced demon is a massive disappointment. They're always teasing him, they're always talking about him, they're always showing him, but he never really does anything apart from a little bit of sewing and dancing. And I'm always kind of like, maybe this time, maybe this time, maybe this time. Whereas the Bride in Black had the opposite effect. She appeared in the first film, not necessarily as a throwaway character, but was more a narrative device to explain the further and some of the other bits that I'll go through in a little bit. But I actually think the Bride in Black is the most frightening thing in that film, outside of the jump scare, and I think her expanded story in the later films only fleshed out that character. So that's why I thought for this video I wanted to talk about the Bride in Black, the character, and obviously Tom Fitzpatrick and his contribution to that character. The photo op, for those of you who are, I'm sure, aware, or you may not be aware, the photo op that is being offered with Tom Fitzpatrick is a standard, which is just him, and they are doing a proper Bride in Black photo. Now, Tom Fitzpatrick, to his absolute credit, he is really game for it. If you look at some of the photos, and I'm sure they'll pop up here, red carpet premieres, Lynn Shay on the red carpet meeting fans, etc. He shows up in costume. He shows up in the full Bride in Black. He is such a trooper, and I think it's really cool when a franchise gets hold of an actor that has a character that they really love and really want to develop and expand and embrace and appreciate. So I'm just putting that out there now. I know it's a little bit of a soapbox opening, I'm sure, but I really am excited to meet the bride in black, and I'm going to explain why. Now, normally with my videos, I don't try to spoil films in any great detail. I like people to watch the film. I want people to watch the film. So that's the first thing I'll say to you now is I recommend you watch these films 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in order. They can be watched out of order, which is why I'm saying that, but I don't recommend you do that until you've watched all of them and at least know what's going on chronologically within the franchise, because there's prequel elements, there's flashbacks, there's, you know, it's one of those where time folds in on itself in the Insidious universe, so characters in the present can talk to their past, can see their future, etc, etc, so it can get very complicated. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about, in a high level, I'm going to talk about the character, the bride in black, because sometimes I think she gets a little bit blurred in the franchise, and because explanations are given across different films at different timelines, it can get easy to kind of lose her narrative thread, even though it's a really cool, really interesting one. So I'm going to present a very high level overview of the bride in black in chronological order of the film's events and not the films themselves. I hope that makes sense, that kind of witter. I'm not going to present this to you as in Insidious 1, in Insidious 2. I'm just going to talk about the character and just reference which film we're talking about. I'm not going to talk about the main overview events. I'm not going to talk about all the actors and the characters. That's not what this is all about. But I'd like to hope that those of you out there who have never watched the Insidious franchise, or maybe you're a little bit aware of it, might be coaxed into the further to have a look at this bride in black character, because I think this is a real plus for the Love of Horror. There's some fantastic photo ops, and if it wasn't for Bill Moseley as Chop Top, I would say that this was the photo of the con when it comes to costume ops. But enough about that now. Spoiler warning is in effect. Let's jump into the bride in black. Before I jump into the bride in black, I do actually want to give a little bit of a public service announcement, because I do think it's important, particularly for newcomers or people who aren't aware of it. I just want to let you know that Tom Fitzpatrick, the actor, did not play the bride in black in Insidious Chapter 1. It was played by a man, and I'll explain that later, but effectively, Tom Fitzpatrick, when I'm talking about the bride in black, Insidious 2, Insidious 3, and Insidious the Red Door are the films in which Tom Fitzpatrick appears as the character. I'm telling you this purely because I, from my perspective, I would rather know, but I would hate for anybody to take a copy of Insidious 1 after watching this video, or just in general, and say, oh great, I've met Tom Fitzpatrick, I met the bride in black, and then someone, you know, will just turn and say, yeah, but he wasn't in the first one. So just a little bit of a friendly warning. It's your dollar, it's your item, you get what you sign, you get whatever you want signed, but for me, just be mindful that Tom Fitzpatrick is not in Insidious Chapter 1. Now let's talk about the bride in black. So now with spoiler warnings in full effect, one thing that I really like about the bride in black is actually, just to touch on it very slightly, the origins of what would become the character. So if you do watch Insidious 1, you will see that the bride in black is played by a man, as I've already stated, but there is no narrative explanation, there is no reference to this in any way, and that was very deliberate. The character, for all intents and purposes, was not supposed to be a man in drag in Insidious 1. It was simply a way that the writer and director James Wan and Lee Winnell, masters of the horror craft, they thought it was a cool way to make the audience feel confused and uncomfortable. When the film tells you there is an old woman and a bride in black, and you see this image, your brain knows that something's not quite right, was the logic that they were providing. If it's a man in a dress and the way it's filmed, things like that, your brain, it can't quite comprehend it. It looks at it saying like, there's something off about this, there's something weird about this. But the film will never tell you. The first film never tells you it's a man in a dress. So I just think that's a point to mention up front, because I think it's really cool, the fact that what I'm about to tell you actually came about as a result of a throwaway idea in the first film. So, in order to start this, we have to go right the way back to the bride in black's childhood. The bride in black is, the real name of the bride in black is Parker Crane. And this little boy comes from a very abusive home. His father disappeared at the age of 7. It's never explained. No name is even given for the father. And it could be that he was killed, or it could be that he simply ran away, because Mrs. Crane, Parker's mother, was completely psychotic. She was totally insane, malicious, malevolent, just an evil piece of work. She resented Parker for being a boy. She did not want a boy, she wanted a girl. She resented Parker for even his own name, because Parker's father gave him that name. So anytime Parker would write his name on a drawing, or would reference it, or would make any reference to being a boy, sadly Mrs. Crane would physically abuse and assault Parker regularly, forcing him to wear dresses and wigs and respond as a girl. It is a horrible, abusive upbringing that Parker was brought into this world on. Now, it's never explained how it happened, but Mrs. Crane died in her early to mid-30s, and the reason that, although the film will never tell you why, or the franchise will never tell you why, when the ghosts appear, because I haven't fully explained the further yet, so when I get to it in a minute, but when ghosts appear, they appear in the form of how they looked when they died. So the fact that Mrs. Crane as a ghost does not appear as an old woman serves to tell you that she must have died in her 30s when Parker was still maybe a child, if not an early teenager. Now, with her being dead, her ghost returned from the further and would haunt Parker incessantly, driving Parker quite literally insane. Eventually, Parker would don the personality of the Bride in Black the older he got, and Parker, in the guise of the Bride in Black, would kill at least 15 women. There are 15 confirmed female deaths under his belt by the time he dies in the mid-80s. There is a conflict with Parker, though. Parker, it's sort of insinuated that Parker does not necessarily want to be the Bride in Black, and his mother is forcing him, but then he also seems to develop a real thirst for the killing and a real enjoyment of the killing. So arguably there is maybe some diagnosis of schizophrenia here, a situation of nature and nurture blended together. Mrs. Crane forcing her son in the guise of a woman to kill women, presumably maybe because Mrs. Crane has a resentment towards women because she doesn't have a daughter, or perhaps it was the Bride in Black trying to appease his mother by only killing women and bringing her female corpses. But eventually, for reasons that are never truly explained, that this friction kind of comes to a head when Mrs. Crane forces Parker to attempt to unsuccessfully castrate himself when he is an old man. As a result of it, I think he's about 90 when it happens, but as a result of this, he is hospitalized, and whilst recovering in hospital, a young boy walks past his room and sees him, and when he approaches Parker, awakening and seeing this little boy, presumably because he's young and healthy and happy and a little boy, he just goes completely ballistic at the child and reaches for the child and frightens off this little boy. As a result, obviously, of the castration, the events, and everything that's going on, Parker elects to kill himself 2 days later by jumping off the roof. So for all intents and purposes, the Bride in Black's physical life ends in the mid-80s with a suicide. Now, at this point in time, we have to move to another family with a little boy by the name of Josh, and it is revealed that Josh was the little boy that the Bride in Black attacked in the hospital room. This little boy has a very special ability, which is the ability to leave his body, to astral project himself into the realm between the living and the afterlife, which will be known as the Further in the Insidious franchise. He has the ability to mentally leave his body and fly around and enjoy himself and have all these kind of adventures. Over time, he starts to tell his mother that he is being visited and spoken to by an old woman, an old lady in black, is talking to him, and he is frightened of her. She is frightening him, and of course the mother will dismiss this as childish fantasies, silly dreaming, and all this kind of stuff. But things go to a little bit of a head when Josh's mother starts to take photographs of her son, just casually, having fun, nothing special, and starts to see the Bride in Black, a ghostly image of the Bride in Black appearing in the backgrounds of photos. And over time, the Bride in Black gets closer and closer and closer to the stage where she's almost touching Josh. And terrified of this, she reaches out to a medium, a psychic investigator, whatever you want to call her, a young lady by the name of Elise. Now, Elise, in her older form, is played by Lynn Shay, but in the chronological order of what I'm talking about, the young Elise comes to the house to visit Josh, to meet with him, to find out and understand what this thing is. When she goes off to see it, the bride in black physically assaults Elise and slashes her arms, to which at this point Elise comes running out and refers to the bride of black, not for the last time, as a parasite. And effectively what this thing is trying to do, the bride in black's goal, is to remove Josh from his astral form, to get him into the astral plane, I should say, sorry, and leave his astral form stuck in the further, which would then allow the bride in black to steal his physical body. Presumably the reason that the bride in black has chosen Josh is because he is a young, healthy boy, and I would assume that the bride in black wants to have the childhood and the boyhood that he never had. So he is drawn to Josh for this reason, is what is heavily insinuated anyway. Seeing how powerful this thing is, seeing how dangerous this thing is, Elise elects to hypnotize Josh to forget about the further and to forget that he has the ability to astral project and leave his body, thus shutting the door, quite literally and metaphorically, on the bride in black. So as long as Josh doesn't remember, the bride in black is stuck. Now, for Josh, the story is effectively over at this point in the timeline, but years and years later, many years later it has to be said, Elise, who has been working with her husband, solving, I say, all these kind of astral projection problems and being a kind of a, I don't want to say a superhero of the astral plane, but they do all these kind of medium things. Unfortunately, her husband elects to commit suicide, so Elise is left alone in a very dark place, a very sad place, and she, knowing that she mustn't do it, because she's very clear to everybody that when you visit the further, or the further I should say, should never be visited by human beings. You should never go to the further. It is the place between life and death that is not for the living. The parasites, the monsters, the demons that exist within that cold, dark place between life and afterlife, they want to hurt you, they want to steal your body, and when you go there, they will do everything in their ability to harm you, separate you from your body, and do all that kind of stuff. So being fully aware of the fact that she must never go into the further, because Elise, and I haven't really explained it too well, but Elise is a very powerful clairvoyant. She's a very powerful connection with the further. So it's one of these situations where she's fully aware that she must never go into the further. The further is the last place to go. But with the grief of her husband's death, she elects to go and see if she can find him. She knows she shouldn't do it, but she goes into the further. At that point, she is attacked by the bride in black. The bride in black appears and grabs her and tries to throttle her and choke her and says, "This is how you die. This is how you die." She manages to break free of the bride in black and escape the further back to her physical body, and vows never to go back to the further again. So it's set up very quickly that although the door is very much closed for the bride in black and Josh, the bride in black is very much still there in the further. So with the bride in black effectively subdued into the further, Josh with his memory wiped and his ability to astral plane lost, and Elise effectively retired from travelling into the further because she was frightened of the bride in black coming to kill her, we pick up the events of the story in its chronological order many years later, in I think about 2010, I want to say. So Parker Crane having died in 1986, the events of Josh happening in the early 90s, we then travel forward to 2010-ish. Josh has a family, has a wife, has 3 kids, everything's great. His son Dalton starts to talk about how when he sleeps he can fly and see things and travel from his body, and he sees himself sleeping and can leave his body. Josh naturally dismisses this as a child's dream, a child's fantasy, an overactive imagination. But then one morning, after moving into this new property, when Dalton does not wake up, the family naturally assume that he is in some kind of coma. His body is fine, his mind is just not there, something has gone wrong. At the same time, ghostly apparitions and things start to appear in the property, malevolent creatures pointing at Dalton in his bedroom. start to appear. So naturally, Dalton's father Josh decides we need to move house. We need to get out of here. This house is haunted. Unfortunately, as the tagline of Insidious 1 tells you, it's not the house that's haunted, it's your son. So they move house, and these premonitions, creatures, malevolent entities follow Dalton as well. So when Josh tells his mother about this, his mother acts with absolutely no surprise, and in fact appears armed with photographs, the very photographs that she had held and hidden, because one question that is raised early in the first Insidious film is, why are there no photographs of Josh when he was young? There are plenty of photographs of him when he was a teenager onwards, but for some strange reason there's no photographs of Josh in the house. His mother shows up with a box of pictures of Josh as a child, the pictures that were being taken in the past, which reveal that the bride in black was obviously approaching and trying to get to his body. His mother approaches Josh with this to say that this is not the first time this has happened, and Elise is brought in, who is friends with Josh's mother, and obviously Josh and Elise have a reunion, which Josh has no idea what's going on, and Elise says that yes, it was me, I was here 24 years ago, and I effectively wiped your memory. However, it appears that your son has inherited your wonderful ability to travel in the further and has got stuck in the further. Basically, something in the further has got him, and the longer he is away from his physical body, the more the ghosts, apparitions, demons, etc. will have the chance to steal his body, which is why these ghosts are appearing in the house and getting closer and closer to Dalton. The longer his body's empty, the more appetite they're getting to be able to steal his body. So armed with the fact that his son is lost and he has forgotten how to astral plane, Elise has to task Josh with the ability to remember that he must travel to the further. He has to go and get his son. It's a little bit of a side fun, but when you know chronologically that obviously Elise, because one question you could ask is, why does Elise not go into the further herself and go and get Dalton? The explanation is given that I think it's Dalton and Josh's connection to each other is the guide, but I like the fact that when you've watched the future films and they've filled in the fact that the bride in black is waiting in the further for Elise, that actually gives a really nice narrative explanation as to why Elise did not want to travel into the further in Insidious. But anyway, so Josh's mind is reminded, is reawakened to the fact that he can travel, so he goes into the further to find his son. Eventually, having gone through a number of different areas and seen many different entities and bits and pieces, again, no spoilers there, he finds his son chained up by the red-faced demon. Having freed his son and run as quick as they could, the red-faced demon gives chase, but to be perfectly honest, just kind of gives up. Again, like what I said at the beginning of the video, the red-faced demon is all tease, no action. Dalton and Josh are separated, so Dalton returns to his body and wakes up, but Josh is behind. For some reason, he feels physically a lot more tired. He looks physically more tired. Perhaps it's just, he's just an older man. He's been running around, all this kind of stuff. But again, they get separated and Josh is out of breath. Whilst he is getting his breath back, he sees a candle lit from a window, and when he looks into the window, the bride in black appears in front of him, and eventually he moves on, and for all intents and purposes it looks like Josh escapes. Now, massive spoilers here, even though there is a spoiler warning in effect. The bride in black is actually successful in stealing adult Josh's body. So he is trapped. He traps Josh in the further, and the bride in black actually gets into the body of Josh. And the first thing he does, exactly as he promised, was the bride in black first action of business is to throttle and strangle Elise, because Elise knows something's wrong and she takes his picture, and the picture shows the bride in black. So again, all this this kind of timey-wimey franchise where things later will affect the past, affect the future. Exactly what the bride in black had been warning Elise for all those years was going to happen is the first thing he does as soon as he gets out. And at that point, that is where we move into Insidious 2. So having got a physical body and escaped the further, escaped the darkness and the cold of the further, Parker Crane, aka the bride in black, is obviously free. The problem is that his decaying spirit inside a physical body is killing the body. So unfortunately, it's a very short-lived victory in that his body starts to break down, teeth start to fall out, hair starts to fall out, and he quickly realizes that not only is this body not going to last, but he is still being haunted by his mother. Mrs. Crane, who becomes the chief antagonist in Insidious Chapter 2, is still there and still driving him forward, telling him to kill, telling him to kill. We never see the possessed Josh don the Bride in Black outfit, but when possessed Josh eventually does try to kill his family, there are moments in which his wife see the Bride in Black instead of Josh. So unfortunately, it has to be said, with this nice thick backstory, once the Bride in Black achieves his goal, it kind of descends a little bit into a kind of a Shining rip-off, is what I would say, which is a great shame. It's revealed, though, again, it starts to get a little bit complicated here. It is revealed, though, that the Bride in Black has been hiding in her own memories in the Further. So Josh, trapped in the Further, who reconnects with Elise, travel through the Further, through the Bride in Black's memories, to try and unravel the mystery as to what's going on with the Bride in Black. And it all falls down to Mrs. Crane. So it is revealed, as I said before, that Mrs. Crane has been puppeting her son and forcing him to kill and do all these things. And indeed, Mrs. Crane is telling the Bride in Black in Josh's possessed body that if he kills Josh's family, this will stop the decay of the body. Whether or not that's true or complete falsity, or Mrs. Crane just trying to force her son to do something, is never explained. Josh and Elise do eventually find a way to defeat the Bride in Black. And in effect, it is by resolving Mrs. Crane's unfinished business is the best way to do it. The idea being that because Mrs. Crane can pass over into the afterlife, presumably hell, that then means that the Bride in Black also has no unfinished business and effectively vacates Josh's body. It's a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit of a disappointment in that as soon as the Bride in Black, Parker Crane, gets into a physical body, it becomes this little bit of a Shining rip-off, and ultimately it's kind of the Darth Vader and the Emperor Palpatine effect, in that as soon as the Bride in Black achieves its goal and you think, oh great, here we go, it's then revealed that no, there is a bigger evil, there is a bigger nasty out there, a bigger boss, which is Mrs. Crane. So in order to defeat the Bride in Black, we need to defeat Mrs. Crane. So what I've just gone through with you in a very high level way is the Bride in Black's involvement in Insidious 1, 2 and 3. The Bride in Black and Parker Crane do not make any appearance in Insidious 4: The Last Key. Now, when it was announced that Insidious 5, The Red Door, was coming out, it would be natural to assume that the Bride in Black would play no part in this film. All the advertising was about the Red Door, the red-faced demon, the red-faced demon scratching the door and all this kind of stuff. And again, I've already said my opinion of the red-faced demon, but when we went to see the film, I went in relatively blind, and I was impressed on two fronts. So technically speaking, the Bride in Black does appear in Insidious, the Red Door, despite the fact that Mrs. Crane and the Bride in Black, Parker Crane, are completely vanquished at the end of the second film. Because of the time-folding nature of the Further and how the future can interact with the past and the past can interact with the future, there is a moment while Dalton is in the Further in which he is attacked, and it is revealed to be the Bride in Black. They reuse footage of Tom Fitzpatrick, though, is what I would say. So I don't believe that he was there on set. I don't believe that he filmed anything new. And in fact, I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same shot that was used in Insidious 2, but that doesn't matter because it made an appearance. So it's always nice. It was a nice appearance. It was 2-3 fleeting seconds and he disappeared. We didn't see him again at any point. So I hope that made sense and hopefully fleshed out the Bride in Black in a little bit more detail than maybe is readily available when you watch these films. I think the Bride in Black, in terms of horror icons, is absolutely terrifying. I think it works really well. I think it works even better when you know the story. The imagery is fantastic. Tom Fitzpatrick deserves all the praise in the world for the level of dedication he gives to this role. The fact that it is Lin Shaye's Elise character's proper nemesis. Again, they will always tease the red-faced demon, but the fact that this was the character that Elise was frightened of, this was the character that was waiting, it had this inhuman patience, kind of almost Michael Myers-esque, that the Bride in Black sat in the Further waiting for 25 years and at the very first opportunity leapt at its chance and worked. I think the iconography is fantastically terrifying. If it's not pictures of the red-faced demon, it is always the Bride in Black. I'm super excited to meet Tom Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick. I'm super excited to get that photo op. I really cannot wait. I think that's going to do it for this video. Again, this video was slightly different from my normal guest guide. I wanted to spend, as I said, a little bit more time focusing on the character of the bride in black as opposed to the actor, because I think this is one of those very rare occasions where the character is almost bigger than the actor who plays it in terms of its place in horror. I hope you really enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe. This is one of many. Do check out the rest of them. I am doing another Insidious video, which is obviously the icon Lynn Shay, and I've got a lot to say about Lynn Shay because I absolutely adore Lynn Shay. She's one of my all-time favourite Scream Queens. So with that being said, until next time, stay scared.
This is how you die.